Jaya Kunda Bihari Jaya Radha Jaya Kunda Bihari Jaya Gopi Ganavali Radha Jaya Girivardhari Jaya Gopi Ganavali Radha Jaya Girivardhari Yashodhanandana Prasajanuranjana Yashodhanandana Prasajanuranjana Yamuna Tiraravanachari Yamuna Tiraravanachari Jaya Radha Jaya Kunda Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunda Bihari Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Jaya Radha Radha Giri Giri Radha Giri Giri Radha Radha Jaya Radha Radha Giri Giri Radha Giri Giri Radha Radha Jaya Jagannath Jaya Jagannath Jaya Jagannath Jaya Jagannath Jaya Jagannath Jaya 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 Gauranga 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 Jaya Gauranga Nitya Gaura Hari Guru Hari Guru Hari Guru Nitya Gaura Hari Guru Jaya Jaya Prabhu Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Jaya Guru Dev, Guru Dev, Guru Dev, Jaya Jaya Guru Dev. जय जय श्री राधा गिरिधारी भगवान की जय जय जगन्नाथ बलदेव सुभद्रा मैया की जय जय गौर निताय की जय जय शिला प्रभुपाद की जय जय गुरु महाराज की जय अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय हरि नाम संकीर्तन की जय. So once again, Hare Krishna dear devotees, please accept my humble obeisances. I consider myself very, very fortunate to be given this opportunity to purify myself through this service. And so today we will be looking at reading from Canto 4. But before we get to that, I'll just read a couple of sections from Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita. So please bear with me whilst I share my screen. So can everyone see my screen?
Yes, Mataji.
Yeah, you can see.
Thank you. So we'll start off from here. So Allen Ginsberg lived nearby on East 10th Street. One day he received a peculiar invitation in the mail. It read, practice the transcendental sound vibration. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. This chanting will cleanse the dust from the mirror of the mind. International Society for Krishna Consciousness, meeting at 7 a.m. daily, Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays at 7 p.m. You are cordially invited to come and bring your friends. Swamiji had asked the boys to distribute it around the neighborhood. One evening, soon after he received the invitation, Allen Ginsberg and his roommate Peter Orlovsky arrived at the storefront in a Volkswagen minibus. Allen had been captivated by the Hare Krishna mantra several years before when he had first encountered it at the Kumbh Mela festival in Allahabad, India, and he had been chanting it often ever since. The devotees, the devotees were impressed to see the world famous author of Howl and leading figure of the best generation enter their humble storefront. His advocacy of free sex, marijuana, and LSD, his claims of drug induced visions of spirituality in everyday sights, his political ideas, his exploration of insanity, revolt, and nakedness, and his attempts to create a harmony of like minded souls. All were influential on the minds of American young people, especially those living on the Lower East Side. Although by middle class standards he was scandalous and disheveled, he was in his own right a figure of worldly repute, more so than anyone who had ever come to the storefront before. Allen Ginsberg. Bhaktivedanta seemed to have no friends in America, but was alone, totally alone, and gone somewhat like a lone hippie to the nearest refuge, the place where it was cheap enough to rent. There were a few people sitting cross-legged on the floor. I think most of them were Lower East Side hippies who had just wandered in off the street with beards and a curiosity and inquisitiveness and a respect for spiritual presentation of some kind. Some were sitting there with glazed eyes, but most of them were just like gentle folk, bearded, hip, and curious. They were refugees from the middle class in Lower East Side, looking exactly like street sadhus in India. It was very similar, that phase in American underground history, and I liked immediately the idea that Swami Bhaktivedanta had chosen the Lower East Side of New York for his practice. He had gone to the lower depths. He'd gone to a spot more like the streets of Calcutta than any other place. So, Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita ki Jai. So I'll stop there. And I will share my screen so that I can bring up the verse that we are looking at today. Can I please just confirm that everyone can still see my screen?
Yes, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Krishna, thank you. So today we're reading from Canto 4, The Creation of the Fourth Order. Chapter is 27, titled Attacked by Chandavega on the City of King Puranjana, the character of Kalakanya, and we are discussing verse 9. So, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanaya Namaskritya. Naram Chaiva Narottamam. Devim Saraswatim Vyasam. Tato Jayam Mudiraye. Nashta Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttam Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki. शृण्वतं स्वाकथा कृष्ण पुण्यशर्वण कीर्तन हृदयन्तस्तु हि अभद्राणि विदुनोति सुहृत्सताम्. Verse 9 reads as follows. Putranam cha bhavan putra ekasya shatam shatam ye vai pauranjano vamshi panchaleshu samidhitam. Putranam cha bhavan putra ekasya shatam shatam ye vai pauranjano vamsha panchaleshu samidhitam. पुत्रनां च भवन् पुत्र एकस्य शतां शतां ये वै पौरञ्जनो वांश पञ्चलेषु samhitita. Would anyone like to recite? Please go ahead.
Hare Krishna Mataji, Dandavat Pranam.
Dandavat Pranam, Prabhuji.
Putranam chavan putra ekasya shatam shatam yair boi puranjano vamsha panchaleshu samedita. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhuji. Anyone else?
Hare Krishna. Mataji, I am also.
Thank you.
Putranam cha bhavan putra ekoikasya shatam shatam yorvoir puranjano mamsha panchaleshu samadhitaha. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Mataji.
Go ahead, Mataji.
Putranam cha bhavan putra ekoikasya shatam shatam vair vai pauranjana vamshaha panchaleshu samedhitaha. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Hare Krishna Mataji, I am also trying.
Go ahead, Mataji.
Putranang cha bhavan putra ekasya shatam shatam jairvai parunjano vangsha panchaleshu samedhitaha. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Anyone else? If not, we'll start with the word for word meanings. Would anyone like to read that?
Yes, Mataji. Putranam of the sons, cha also, abhavan, were produced, putra sons, ekasya, of each one, shatam, 100, shatam, 100, yoi, by whom, vai, certainly, Puranjanaha, of King Puranjana, Vangsha, family, Panchaleshu, in the land of Panchala, Samedhitaha, greatly increased. Thank you.
Thank you, Mataji. I'll read the translation by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Of these many sons, each produced hundreds and hundreds of grandsons. In this way, the whole city of Panchal became overcrowded by these sons and grandsons of King Puranjana. We'll read the purport next. Would anyone like to read the purport? And it's a long purport, so yeah, go ahead, Prabhuji.
Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. We must remember that Puranjana is the living entity and the city of Panchala is the body. The body is the field of activity for living entity as stated in Bhagavad Gita, Kshetra Kshetragna. There are two constituents. One is living entity, Kshetragna, and the other is the body of living entity, Kshetra. Any living entity can know that he is covered by the body if he only contemplates the body a little bit. Just with little contemplation, he can come to understand the body is his position. One can understand this by practical experience and by the authority of the Shastra. In Bhagavad Gita 2.13, it is said, Dehinasmin yata dehe. The proprietor of the body, the soul, is within the body, and the body is taken as the Panchaladesh or the field of activities, wherein the living entity can enjoy the senses in their relationship to the five sense objects, namely Gandha, Rasa, Rupa, Sparsha, and Shabda. That is sense object made out of earth, water, fire, air, and sky. Within this material world, covered by the material body of subtle and gross matter, every living entity creates action and reaction, which are herein known as allegorically as sons and grandsons. There are two kinds of action and reaction, namely pious and impious. In this way, material existence becomes coated by different action and reaction. In this regard, Srila Narottam Das Thakur states, Karma Kanda Jnana Kanda Kevala Vishara Bhanda Amrita Valiya Jiva Khai Nana Yoni Sada Fire Adarja Vakshana Kare Tara Janma Adha Pate Hai. Fruitive activities and mental speculation are simply cups of poison. Whoever drinks of them, thinking them to be nectar, must struggle very hard, life after life, in these different types of bodies. Such a person eats all kinds of nonsense and becomes condemned by his activities of so-called sense enjoyment. Thus, the field of action and reaction by which one's descendants are increased begin with sex life. Puranjana increased his whole family by begetting sons who in their turn begot grandsons. Thus, the living entity, being inclined towards sexual gratification, becomes involved in many hundreds and thousands of action and reactions. In this way, he remains within the material world simply for the purpose of sense gratification and transmigrates from one body to another. His process of producing so many sons and grandsons results in so-called societies, nations, communities, and so on. All these communities, societies, dynasties, nations simply expand from sex life. As stated by Prahlad Maharaj, Yata Maitunadi Grihanidhi Shukam hi Tucham. Bhagavad Srimad Bhagavatam 7.9.45. A Grihamedi is one who wants to remain within this material existence. This means he wants to remain within the body or society and enjoys friendship, love and community. His only enjoyment is in increasing the number of enjoyers. He enjoys sex and produces children, who in their turn marry and produce grandchildren. The grandchildren also marry, and in their turn they produce grandchildren, great-grandchildren. In this way, the entire world becomes overpopulated, and then suddenly there are reactions provoked by material nature in the form of war, famine, pestilence, and earthquakes, etc. Thus, the entire population is again extinguished simply to be recreated. This process is explained in Bhagavad Gita 8.19 as repeated creation and annihilation. Bhutva Bhutva Pralayite. Due to lack of Krishna consciousness, all this creation and annihilation is going on under the name of human civilization. This cycle continues due to man's lack of knowledge of the soul and the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhuji. Thank you for reading that. So I'll stop sharing my screen, and what I'll do, obviously in this verse, it's a long purport. It's a very beautiful purport, and Srila Prabhupada covers a lot of different points. And so I've made an attempt to cover some of this in today's class. So I've created some presentation slides, so I'll share that, and then we'll take it on from there. Can I just please confirm you can still see my screen?
Yes, Mataji.
Thank you. So before we look at the, or I go into discussing the verse itself, some of the realizations, I'll just say the Guru mantra. So, Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruvaya Namah. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shivasati Gaura Bhakta Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. I'll just quickly read the translation again. Of these many sons, each produced hundreds and hundreds of grandsons. In this way, the whole city of Panchal became overcrowded by the sons and grandsons of King Puranjan. So we see in terms of what's happening so far, or the background and context. So in this chapter so far, we see that King Puranjana is so entangled in family life that he is not aware of the impending dangers that lies ahead of him. So in the towards the end of the previous chapter, we see that the king returns from the forest and he comes back home. Now, because this is an allegoric story, everything represents something. So him coming back home from the forest indicates that he repents leading a sinful life. Then he takes a bath, which indicates that he's purifying himself and he's atoning for his sinful activities. Then he decorates, he puts decorations on his body, which represents knowledge and religion. And then the next thing that he does is he pacifies his queen and he seeks forgiveness. So this indicates that he is now accepting dharma. So his wife Puranjani, as we know in the previous chapters, she represented material intelligence, and now she represents spiritual intelligence. So we see that King Puranjana, associating with his wife after returning from the forest, that is within the boundaries of Dharma. So we know that Dharma is following rules and regulations as per the Vedas. So the king is acting in a pious manner because he is following the rules of the Veda. However, it is definitely better than adharma, which means just acting whimsically. So, a key point that we must remember, and His Holiness Devi Swami really covered it very nicely in yesterday's class, that, the king himself was pious, but he was doing everything based on Karam Kand. So, however, that is not considered sufficient. It's definitely better than adharma, but it does not lead to our param dharma, which is supreme. Now, param dharma is basically bhakti, and that is what was missing from Puranjana's life. So despite the atonement from previous sinful activities and leading a household life as recommended in the Vedas, meaning one is required to take care of wife and children, but because he was just concentrating on that duty within the boundaries of Dharma and did not consider the higher goals of life, we see he becomes entangled in family life. So coming back to today's verse, there are a number of key points that Srila Prabhupada brings out in the purport, and we'll be looking at these ones today. So on the next slide, we've got the key themes that I could get from the purport are, first and foremost, the dangers involved in household life. So, how can we remain focused on the higher goal? The next thing that we look at is karmic reactions. So particularly in the purport, Srila Prabhupada explains the impacts of living a sinful life. What does it lead to? So we'll look a little on that, and then obviously we look at devotional service. We try to understand how devotional service can be achieved whilst being active in household life. So the first thing to note is that there are the scriptures and Srila Prabhupada often talks about householders in two contexts. So the first one is Gramhedi. So a Gramhedi is one who wants to remain in this material world. He lives the life of a householder. The goal of his life is limited to self-sense enjoyment. So he or she enjoys the comforts that come with family and society. And another key differentiation between a Gramhedi and a Grahastha is that they are very, very envious of others. Why are they envious? When one has the propensity to enjoy, they need a benchmark to compare themselves against. So they generally like to compare with others. So that's the definition of a Gramhedi. Then we have Grihasthas. So a Grihastha are those with family, so they also live within the confinement of family life, but the idea is to lead a life where one balances their material and spiritual life in a way that they can progress towards a higher goal. So what you'd see on the screen are the two definitions as given by Srila Prabhupada. And then we look at, for the purpose of today's class, we are looking at household life for practicing devotees. Now, we might say, why are we looking at this for practicing devotees? Now, I often, I enjoy listening to Nitai Sevani Mataji, who is one of my mentors. And in her class, she often mentions that it is us, practicing devotees, that need the most guidance. Why? And she explains this beautifully because she says that we are just like a pendulum. So what does she mean by that? So, we have pure devotees, and pure devotees, they definitely know what they want, right? So they are the likes of our gurus and swamis. They know exactly what they want, and they are constantly focused on that one single goal, which is the lotus feet of Krishna. So Krishna is everything and nothing else. So they always thinking of Krishna, and they never forget Krishna. So that's our pure devotees. Then we have the materialists or the Brahmedis. They also know what they want. They want to enjoy life. Their concept of bhakti is to visit the temple once in a while. They do some puja in a ritualistic way, and that is enough. So they have a very, very narrow vision. So it's all about me and mine. And then there is us. And I must say that, that's, I'm talking about myself here. So sometimes we get very, very serious about going back to Krishna. And sometimes we are not so serious. So it's just like, like a pendulum, it swings from one side to the other. So, very serious sometimes. Everything seems fine and dandy. We start thinking that maybe, this is good enough. I'm leading the life. I'm leading a transcendental life, and, everything's focused towards the lotus feet of Krishna, and I will make it to the other side. Then there are other times, we are not so enthusiastic. And, sometimes we might start thinking that, oh, maybe I can balance both and be successful in both. And then, or sometimes, we see everyone else who's not practicing Krishna consciousness, they doing fine. And, all these doubts start coming into our minds. So, that's why, it's practicing devotees are sometimes referred to as a swinging pendulum. So, we'll notice that, recently we have had a number of Maharajas come and visit. And so we've been following them, we have been following them. We've been listening to their lectures, and, the dust from the lotus feet, they just sprinkle on us, and we start feeling very, very good. But then when they leave, we start going back into our lives. We start associating with people from different walks of life, and then we start feeling a bit demotivated. So hence, most of the time the classes that we hear each morning, it is for guiding us towards the higher goal. So coming back to the first point that Srila Prabhupada makes in the purport is all around the dangers that are involved in householder life. So when we read the Bhagavatam, and this is something that I've come to realize, that we may notice that one of the favorite topics in Srimad Bhagavatam is to criticize family life. So over and over in Srimad Bhagavatam, in the different pages, we find that the sages, the demigods such as Lord Brahma, they're always lamenting the fate of those entangled in family life on this earth. In Canto 3, there's this beautiful, I think it's in chapter 15, where Lord Brahma is talking to the demigods, and he talks about the Vaikuntha planets, and he describes that it's such a wonderful place. He describes the residence, the place itself, the beads, and the animals, how they're always listening at the, even though the birds sing so beautifully, they would stop and listen to the demigods who are singing the glories of the Lord, because everything is just so transcendental. So he's giving this wonderful description, and then right bang in the middle, he stops, and for a while, in the next 3 verses, he goes, "Oh, alas, how unfortunate are the people on planet Earth who don't enjoy listening to the glories of the Supreme Lord and his pastimes." And so he thrashes the householder life, family life in a couple of verses, and then he goes back to describing the Vaikuntha planets again. And then we also see that Lord Kapil Dev, in his teachings, he talks very harshly of householder life. Then we have Prahlad Maharaj. So sometimes it's compared to a prison house where one is shackled, and the different attractions of family life is compared to the shackles. Other times it's compared to a dark well where family members, who are called as swajanas, are compared to vultures and burglars in the name of family, and they are stealing from you. And it says that as long as one is earning, he is given some respect. But as soon as he gets old, even in his own home, he is no longer given that respect anymore. And, sometimes he is even abused. So all for one reason, that he's no longer earning. So, and then of course, other times it is described as a dense, dark forest. So all these different ways that the Bhagavatam sort of talks about family life. So what do we make of all this? And especially since most of us are involved in family life and we value these relationships. They do mean a lot to us, and in the material world, it is known that the highest form of happiness does lie in having meaningful, valuable relationships with our family members. So, today I just wanted to discuss how we can look at these relationships from a spiritual perspective, but at the same time continue to value our family relationships. So the first point to realize is that, or to understand, is to understand why do the scriptures time and again, continue to condemn family life or speak so harshly of it. And the response to that question is they are not. Now, the scriptures, as we understand, are praman. They don't lie. So we should understand that the scriptures are not condemning household life. Rather, it is reminding us of the troubles that are involved in these relationships. And why do they continuously remind us? So that it helps us to train our vision to something beyond. The essence of the message in the pages of the Bhagavatam is not encouraging us to leave the relationship behind, but instead it shows us an alternative path in order to teach us to lean on those relationships in a way that it can benefit us in the most favorable way. Now, it is for our benefit rather than for our downfall. And again, why is it stated in so many pages? Couldn't it have just been covered once and, be it? Again, it's stated again and again so that, we live in Kali Yuga, and the general tendency of people in Kali Yuga, even if we look at it from a materialistic point of way, someone has to be told something 7 times before the penny drops. So it's covered in so many places because it is reminding us of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's message, and his key message has always been Jeev Jago, wake up to your situation and see beyond your current situation. So it also teaches us that beyond a certain point, after you have performed your prescribed duties, we are required to detach ourselves and do just bhakti. So we should be doing bhakti throughout our householder life, but at a certain point, we should just completely, detach ourselves and do bhakti. So if we go back to King Puranjana, after marrying off his children in the previous verse, that would have been sufficient in terms of him performing his prescribed duties. He should have then backed off and just practiced bhakti. And, he should have started winding down from his household duties. So that is what the Srimad Bhagavatam is telling us over and over again. So how can we see, or how can we use our relationship in family life in the most favorable way? Now, Krishna gives us a hint of how to handle this situation, which is a delicate situation, because sometimes, remember, when we read or when we go deep into some of these pages of the Bhagavatam, it can actually, it shows householder life in quite a gloomy way. And, we can get depressed or very, very disappointed. And we may even question ourselves, like, why have we got ourselves into this situation? But Krishna gives us a hint in terms of how to handle the situation, and he gives that in chapter 18 of Bhagavad Gita. So in this chapter, Krishna talks or discusses the topic of renunciation. Now there are two things that he describes here. So he describes sannyasa and tyaga. So if you remember in 18.1, Arjun asks Krishna, what does these two words mean? So again, the Bhagavad Gita, even though Krishna is speaking it to Arjun, he is speaking it indirectly. It is spoken for our benefit. So Krishna asks, what does these two words, sannyasa and tyaga, mean? So as we know, sannyasa means the renounced order of life, and tyaga is also renunciation, but it means giving up the fruits of our activity. Now, both are different variations of the same thing, but Arjun just wanted Krishna to be explicitly clear on these two words. And again, it is being done for our benefit. So Krishna says to Arjun that Kamayanam Karmanam Nyasam Sannyasam. So he says the giving up nasyam of Kamayanam Karmanam is sannyasam. So it is the giving up of activities which are ordinarily desirable by anyone. So for example, some of the desirable things in the material world are associating with the opposite sex is generally considered very attractive to most people. Associating with one's children, considered desirable. The warmth and comfort of home, having power in society, most people find this desirable. So these activities, Krishna says, the giving up of these activities is what sannyasa is. And so, on the other hand, Tyaga, which is another form of renunciation, Krishna says it is the giving up of the fruits of the activity. So it's not giving up the activity itself. So one engages in the activities because one wants to, but then he gives up the fruits of the activity or the results of the activities to the Lord. So all these fruits that come out of it, one looks at it as these are coming from Krishna, and we offer it back to him in a way to maintain a mood of detachment. So, there's an example. So the sannyasi would say, engaging with the opposite sex is something desirable, and therefore I will give it up. The grihastha says, I have a desire to associate with the opposite sex, and therefore I will accept that association through marriage, so following dharma, but then the situation that arises as a result of that, be it children, wealth, house, happiness, whatever relationship, all these things, I am giving it to the Lord. I will use them in a way that it is engaged in the Lord's service. Now, the key point here is that both of them involve austerity. So if we look at sannyasa, the giving up of these activities which are desirable by anyone is austerity. It's a great austerity. But then on the other hand, to give up the results to Krishna of those activities which are enjoyable, that is also austerity. And in Krishna's own words, that is sannyasa as well. And Srila Prabhupada confirms that in so many of his lectures. So both types of results, Krishna says, produce exactly the same results. But here's the thing. For a householder, it produces a wonderful result that can turn a normally dangerous situation into a wonderful one. So the key point Krishna is making is that it is not the shelter that one has accepted. It's about renunciation in the situation that we are already in. So it's about maintaining a purpose or mission in life that goes beyond the immediate situation and not becoming so absorbed in the activities that we get lost and we forget what the real mission is. Now, this type of tyaga, as I've said before, Krishna says produces exactly the same result as the other type of sannyasa. So I'm going to pause here because that brings us to the end of the first point. Is there anything, is that sort of makes sense? Okay, so
Yes,
Yes, Mataji, that was really good. Thank you.
Thank you, Mataji. Then moving on, the second point that Srila Prabhupada mentions in the purport, he talks about karmic reactions. So over here, the scriptures tell us again and again that when one strays from his prescribed duties or disobeys them, then there are reactions. So we get reactions. Now, this is governed by the law of karma and no one can escape it. So in Bhagavad Gita 4.17, Krishna says that, oops, I think I missed the screen. Okay, so in 4.17, Krishna says that the intricacies of karma are so hard to understand, and therefore one should know what is action, what is forbidden action, and what is inaction. So if one lives their life according to the scriptures, then they do not get reactions. So for householders, putting Krishna in the center and taking guidance from Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra is a karma. So remember this, Krishna talks about three types of actions. There's, and Srila Prabhupada mentions it in the purport as well. There's pious actions and there's impious actions, but beyond that is a karma, which is inaction. And so putting Krishna in the center, even when we are in a household situation, we are not accumulating karma because that is a karma. Then we look at, when we put Krishna in the center, we don't lose our way. And as we have seen in the case of Puranjana, when he returns from the forest, which indicates that he freed himself from sinful activities, but then again he loses sight of the higher goal, and that was the key reason why he got entangled. And very often people would say, okay, does that mean that he goes to the forest? No, there's other examples. For example, Amrish Maharaj, he was a king. He remained in the kingdom, but he used all his wealth, everything, in serving the Lord. Then we also look at, here's the verse. So 4.17 clearly says that it is our duty to know what is action, what is inaction, and what is forbidden action. And then, trying to understand how karma works, it's very, very intricate. So, it's very difficult for someone to understand how does karma work. And there's this example in the Mahabharata when Dhritarashtra, after the war, he asked Krishna, what did he do? For which he had to see all his 100 sons die. So Krishna had shown him the vision of his life, 50 lives prior to his current life, where he had mercilessly killed 100 birds, or the eggs of 100 birds, and the parents of the birds actually saw that heinous act. And so Dhritarashtra's next question to Krishna was, why wasn't I given the reaction, in that very same life or in the next few lives? And then Krishna talked about, for him to get 100 sons, he had to accumulate so much piety, and that piety, and again, to be born a king, he accumulated after that many births. So, here Krishna is telling us, no, don't try and understand how, about law of karma. It exists. It's very accurate. What we should be looking at, understanding what the different types of action are, and we should be looking at performing inaction, which does not lead to bondage. The other thing to mention, the other thing that is mentioned is about, and I think I've covered it in the previous slide, where, sin breeds sin. So, the analogy of having so many children and grandchildren in this verse, it indicates thousands of actions and reactions that the living entity accumulates. These activities, if they are not aligned to scriptures, Srila Prabhupada explains that happens as a result of lacking in Krishna consciousness, and the impact is not just at an individual level, but it has a much, much bigger impact, because sin breeds sin, and ultimately it leads to miseries which arise from natural catastrophes such as war, famine, pestilence, earthquakes, etc. So, he nicely explains Adi Devic clashes, how they come about because of lack of Krishna consciousness, because people at a gross level are accumulating sin, and therefore that's how that comes about. Then last but not least, we look at, in the slide just talks about putting Krishna in the middle, and dovetailing all our activities with Krishna in the middle is a karma, and that is what we should be striving for. And then the final point is around, oh, did I lose that slide? It's around devotional service. So bhakti, as we know, is the only solution that will save one from leading a sinful life, and it will stop us taking birth. So if we stop taking birth, obviously death won't happen. So that's the only solution to get out of this bodily concept of life. And we will see when Narad finishes with the story, that is what King Parichanabharishit would do. In fact, it is said that he would not even wait for the Prachetas, his sons, to come back. He pretty much just leaves. So, as we've seen from the previous points, the living entity performing bhakti does not need to be a separate endeavor. All that is required is to perform one's duty within the order of life that we are already in, but having knowledge of what ought to be done and what should not be done, and through the guidance, and that guidance is available to us in three ways: through Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra. And so we owe so much to Srila Prabhupada. So speaking for myself here, I don't think I would have ever understood bhakti as I do now if it wouldn't have been the mercy from Srila Prabhupada. So the idea is, that pendulum for practicing devotees like myself, to stop the pendulum. The idea is to stop the pendulum at the end where we move closer and closer towards the end goal, in terms of completing life, and trying to make it to the other side in a safe way. So I will end there, and if anyone would like to please add on to it, or to correct if I've covered anything incorrectly, please go ahead and feel free to add on to what I've covered.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, Mataji, Dandavat Pranam.
Dandavat Pranam, Prabhuji.
For a long time, I'm just hearing you today. Yeah, It's a beautiful class, as you always do it, so systematically, and things are tabulated, very easy to understand, and you have maintained that very nicely with a very clear conception of the subject you discussed, like how this Griyamedi and Griyastha, the differentiation, which is actually I do not understand, did not understand before, but through this discussion, you can
Thank you.
clearly understand the
Very humble.
difference.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's very, very important where we just end up with just moving around here and there, having no knowledge what to do and what not to do. And the key points you have mentioned how this danger involved and the karmic reaction and the devotional service, how they come into our life and how we accept it with the knowledge of Bhagavatam. That you explained very nicely, taking up the examples from Bhagavad Gita and Bhagavatam. And there's King Puranjana's picture is similarly like that. That's why
Yeah.
Narad Muni is teaching him in the way of Puranjana's story, so that it is very easy for us to understand what is the inner meaning. And you have exemplified it so nicely, and so easy method is very, very good to me. And I appreciate the way you have expressed with the allegorical way, plus the examples and the presentation. It really helps us to understand in a better way. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Any questions, or would anyone like to add? I'm sure I haven't covered everything, and it's a long purpose, so please feel free to add to it if you've had additional realizations.
Hare Krishna Mataji, Dandavat Pranam. Thank you very much for the nice class, particularly in a very systematic way. Try to highlight the points of this verse. And first thing you have told from the beginning, from the chapter 18 of Bhagavad Gita, that what is sannyas and what is tyaga, as mentioned there. And the most important point of this verse, which you have very nicely covered, is that the difference between a grihomedi and a grihastha. And in Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, chapter 1, and the verse 4, it is very clearly mentioned the difference, the outlook or the goal of a grihomedi and grihastha. The difference between a grihastha and grihomedi is that grihomedi never no pashuti. He is experiencing, but he is not realizing what he is leading to, what life is leading, and what is the goal of that. By trying to feel safe with his wife, children, and other extended families, he is trying to get a safe situation. But they will atmashanneshu ashatshopi, they will fail ultimately, and they will not be able to go to the highest goal. And that is the difference between a grihomedi and grihastha. But a grihastha, while being engaged in his performing his day-to-day activities with children, with wife, he is performing his duties, but he is focused on his goal, and he knows with the help of his sadhu shastra and guru, he knows what is his goal, and he with all his own daily activities, he is trying to move toward that goal. Whereas a grihomedi remain focused with his day-to-day things and never look at the forward for the ultimate goal. And in this way, that what Prabhupada has also tried to highlight in this verse, that that should be the goal of our goal should be a grihastha for most of us, of course, other than those who are in other bonus, should be from grihastha, but we should not forget the goal of life, and ultimately we can achieve it if we follow Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra. And you very nicely pointed out. Thank you very much for the nice class. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Mataji. Thandot
Hare
Pranam,
Krishna,
Mataji. Thank you very much for a very nice class. Mataji, as you were speaking, I was just thinking, you mentioned three types of people: the non-devotees, the pure devotees, and then in between people who are aspiring like us.
Yeah.
So when we when we are preaching to people, to the non-devotees, we're actually getting them from, they're comfortable in their position, they're comfortable in their total ignorance, doing their own activity, but we're disturbing them, and then we bring them to this place of being aspiring. And then here there's actually a very dangerous place. This aspiring devotees place is actually very dangerous, where we can fall either way. We are swinging like pendulum.
Yeah.
So I was just thinking, how our Guru Maharaj used to say, like, this preaching is like, distressing the comfortable and making comfortable the distressed. So they're distressed, we're trying to make them comfortable, but actually we're also making them uncomfortable, because we have to now move on. We're like in between. We can swing either way. So it just reminded me of that.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Hare Krishna, Mataji.
Thank you, Mataji. Yeah, that's an excellent point, Mataji. It often happens. Just very, very recently we had this opportunity. I think it was last week or the week before last week. We associate with this wonderful family. They lost a family member, and so every couple of months, Sri Sundar Gopal Prabhu's association, we go to their place, and they ask for discourses. And so in the one that we recently had, we talked about karma, and it was just like like Maharaj mentioned yesterday, like for them, really wonderful family, very, very pious, but just talking about karma, and we covered verse 4.17, and it was like, for them it was like we upset the apple cart, and they're doing Ekadashi now, so it's a slow process. But the realization that we get when we go for preaching is that then we come back and then we do a like a SWOT analysis, like it's sometimes like a pendulum. It's just like, okay, we're telling them all these things, but exactly how purified are we? And then it's like a wake-up call for us as well, that okay, we're telling all these things, and they are doing it, but then we need to stretch ourselves as well, so that we can we can also improve along. So it's
that's very nice. Yes, thank you, Mataji.
Thank you. Okay, so we're probably coming to the end now, so if there's no other points, we'll just end here.
Yep.
So thank you everyone for joining, and Vancha
Kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya eva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaः. अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय। हर ग्रेस रंगा देवी दसी माता जी की जय। श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय। गौर प्रेमानंदे हरि हरि बोल। All glories to assembled devotees. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you.